The next muscle we're going to talk about is the tibialis posterior, or the posterior tibialis. It's going to be similar to the anterior tibialis, but guess what? It's going to be on the posterior aspect of the lower leg. So the anterior tibialis originated anterior to the tibia. The posterior tibialis originates posterior side of the tibia, but also some of the fibula. So the origin is posterior tibia and fibula. It's going to run down the side, the posterior medial side of the lower leg, and then it's going to insert on the plantar surface of the tarsals and metatarsals of the foot. So this muscle goes from the back, the posterior aspect of the tibia and fibula, runs down the posterior lateral side of the lower leg, goes underneath the foot, and inserts on the plantar surface of the tarsals and metatarsals. So its job, like the tibialis anterior, is inversion. But the difference is the tibialis anterior is in the front, so it does dorsiflexion, and the tibialis posterior runs in the back, so it does plantar flexion. So the tibialis anterior was dorsiflexion inversion. Now the tibialis posterior is plantar flexion inversion. To demonstrate that a little bit better, I'm going to move the skeleton out of the way here, and I'm going to show you on myself. The tibialis anterior starts anterior tibia, goes on the anterior medial side of the lower leg and inserts to the plantar surface of the first metatarsal. The tibialis posterior starts at the posterior aspect of the tibia and fibula, runs down the posterior medial side of the lower leg, and inserts on the plantar surface of the foot at the tarsals and metatarsals. So the action of the tibialis anterior is dorsiflexion and inversion. Now, because that's in the front, the tibialis posterior is going to do the exact same thing, but it's going to be inversion and plantar flexion because it runs in the posterior aspect of the ankle. So in order to concentrically contract this muscle for our strengthening exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same exercise we did for the tibialis anterior. The only difference is instead of going into dorsiflexion, we're going to go into plantar flexion. So I'm still going to use the resistance band and I'm going into inversion, but instead of bringing my toe up and into inversion and dorsiflexion, I'm going to bring my foot down and in. So now when I bring my big toe down and in towards my midline, I am performing a concentric contraction of my tibialis posterior. Because when I point my toe down, I am contracting the muscle in the posterior aspect, which is the tibialis posterior. When I point my toe up, I'm contracting the muscle that's in the anterior part of my lower leg, which is the tibialis anterior. In order to stretch the muscle, we do the opposite of the action. So the action is plantar flexion and inversion. So what we want to do is going to be dorsiflexion eversion. So we can simply do this exercise, this stretch like this, or we can get in this weird staggered lunge. So in this lunge position, my back foot is in dorsiflexion because I'm in a lunge. Notice decrease in angle, it's flexion. I can simply toe out a bit, so I am in eversion of the ankle, and lean forward. Again, we can only stretch it so far due to the angle of the muscle and our other structure, but we'll get some stretch there for the tibialis posterior. We can include this muscle in the stretch as we do ankle circles. So as we do ankle circles and we come around, we can get part of that tibialis posterior stretched as well, or we can get in the staggered lunge. Our back leg is our stretch ankle. We're in dorsiflexion, so that's the opposite of plantar flexion. Now the opposite of inversion is eversion, so toe out and continue to lean forward for that stretch. So that is the conclusion of the tibialis posterior.